Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt an unease you couldn't quite explain? A subtle wrongness, a quiet disregard for the dignity of others. We often assume that evil wears a monstrous face, but in truth, it can smile, speak softly, and walk beside us unnoticed. As Stoics, we strive to see the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. And the reality is this: some people do not share our values of reason, virtue, and respect. Some manipulate, deceive, and sow discord, not out of ignorance but by choice. It is a painful truth, but one we must confront with wisdom, not fear. Today, we will uncover 9 unmistakable signs of a malevolent presence in your life. Recognizing these signs is not about paranoia, it is about clarity. It is about safeguarding your peace, your purpose, and your principles from those who would undermine them. So stay with me. Every insight shared today is a step toward strength, toward discernment, toward the kind of resilience that no shadow can shake. And if this message resonates, consider subscribing, because wisdom is best pursued together. Number 1. They find joy in others' misfortune. Evil does not always announce itself with cruelty or violence. Sometimes it hides behind a smirk, a subtle gleam of satisfaction when others suffer. Imagine confiding in someone about a personal setback, perhaps a failure, a loss, or a difficult moment at work. You expect empathy, or at the very least, a neutral response. Instead, you notice a flicker of amusement in their eyes, a dismissive chuckle, or even a veiled remark that makes your pain feel like entertainment. This reaction is not just unsettling, it is revealing. It exposes a deep absence of empathy, the very foundation of human connection. A true friend, or even a decent person, feels the weight of another's struggles and offers a steady hand, a listening ear, or words of encouragement. The Stoics understood that life's burdens are not meant to be carried alone. Marcus Aurelius, in his Reflections on Virtue, emphasized the interconnectedness of humanity, reminding us that we exist not as isolated beings, but as limbs of a greater whole. To take pleasure in another's downfall is to betray this natural order. It is a sign of a mind that has turned against reason, against virtue, against the fundamental principles of justice and compassion. A person who delights in the suffering of others is not merely unkind, they are dangerous. They see relationships as a battlefield where another's misfortune somehow elevates their own standing. This is the thinking of a corrupt soul, one that cannot be reasoned with or redeemed unless they choose to face their own moral decay. To recognize this trait in someone is not about judgment, but about wisdom. A Stoic does not harbor resentment, but neither do they ignore reality. We must choose our company wisely, for those who celebrate pain will eventually seek to inflict it. Guard your mind, protect your peace, and surround yourself with those who uplift rather than tear down. True strength lies in our ability to discern, to walk away when necessary, and to uphold our own virtue, even in the presence of those who have forsaken theirs. Number 2. They manipulate your feelings. There is no chain stronger than the one forged from invisible threads, the manipulation of emotion. Those who seek control over others rarely do so with force. Instead, they weave a web of guilt, obligation, and self-doubt, pulling the strings in ways that are almost imperceptible. Have you ever found yourself apologizing for something you didn't do? Feeling responsible for another's misfortune when, deep down, you know it isn't your burden to bear? These are the telltale signs of emotional manipulation, a tactic employed by those who wish to bend your will to their own. Such individuals are masters of distortion. One moment, they are the helpless victim, drawing your sympathy, ensuring that you feel responsible for their suffering. The next, they shift the blame onto you, subtly suggesting that their pain is somehow your fault. Over time, you begin to second-guess yourself, questioning whether your own feelings are valid, whether your decisions are truly your own. This is not mere persuasion. It is control disguised as connection. The Stoics warned against such entanglements. True freedom, they taught, is not simply the absence of physical chains, but the ability to govern one's own mind, to be unmoved by the manipulations of others. Epictetus, a philosopher who himself was born into slavery, yet attained profound inner liberation, taught that the key to resilience lies in recognizing what is truly within our control: our thoughts, our actions, our responses. No one can make you feel guilt, fear, or obligation without your consent. When someone manipulates your emotions, they seek to erode that very sovereignty, to replace your independent judgment with their whispered influence. But a Stoic does not surrender their inner citadel so easily. Instead, they pause, they observe, they ask themselves, is this feeling truly mine, or has it been placed upon me? Recognizing manipulation is the first step to reclaiming your power. When you see the pattern, whether it is guilt-tripping, gaslighting, or the constant shifting of blame, you must stand firm, not with anger, but with clarity. Do not argue, do not justify, simply detach. Your emotions are yours to command, not another's to exploit. This is not merely about self-protection. It is about integrity. A life dictated by the will of others is a life unexamined, unfulfilled. By guarding our emotional independence, we ensure that our choices remain our own, that our relationships are built on mutual respect rather than quiet coercion. We align ourselves with the Stoic ideal, not as puppets to another's schemes, but as sovereign beings, guided by wisdom and virtue. In the end, the question is simple. Will you live by your own principles or by the manipulations of another? Choose well, for that choice defines not only your relationships, but the very essence of your character. Number 3, they are quick to anger. There is no greater sign of inner turmoil than a person who erupts in anger at the slightest inconvenience. We have all encountered them, those whose tempers flare without warning, turning minor disagreements into battlegrounds, their words sharp, their presence suffocating. Their rage is not mere frustration. It is a fire without restraint, scorching everything in its path. The Stoics understood that true strength is not found in domination, but in self-mastery. To lose one's temper is to lose control, not only over oneself, but over the very circumstances one wishes to command. A person ruled by anger is like a ship caught in a storm without a rudder, tossed by every wave, unable to steer, dangerous to all who sail with them. Marcus Aurelius, a man who wielded absolute power yet sought always to rule himself first, wrote, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it?" The harm done by a single outburst often lingers long after the spark has faded, relationships strained, trust eroded, an atmosphere of fear replacing what should have been understanding. A person quick to anger creates an environment where others feel they must walk on eggshells, where words are measured not for their truth, but for their ability to avoid conflict. This is not strength. This is weakness disguised as force. It is the opposite of the Stoic ideal, which teaches us that the world cannot disturb our peace unless we allow it. To recognize this trait in someone is not merely to see a personal failing, it is to glimpse a deeper disorder of the soul. And while Stoicism teaches compassion, It also urges discernment. You are not obligated to endure the storms of another's fury. You can offer patience, yes, but you must also protect your own serenity. If their anger becomes a pattern, a weapon rather than a fleeting emotion, then the wisest course may not be to calm the storm, but to step away from it entirely. To master oneself is the greatest victory. To surround oneself with those who value peace over chaos, reason over rage. That is the path of wisdom. Number 4, they betray trust. Trust is not merely an element of relationships, it is their very foundation. Without it, friendships crumble, partnerships fail, and communities fracture. When someone betrays trust, whether through deception, broken promises, or concealed intentions, the damage extends beyond a single moment of dishonesty. It forces us to question not only the future of that relationship, but also our own judgment. How did we not see it coming? How do we ensure it doesn't happen again? For the Stoics, trust was inseparable from integrity, a core virtue of a life well lived. To be trustworthy is to be whole, unwavering in one's principles, regardless of temptation or external pressure. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. To deceive others is not just an act of betrayal, it is an act of self-corruption, a sign that one's character is fractured, divided between what is spoken and what is done. When someone violates trust, they reveal more than a momentary lapse in judgment. They expose a fundamental flaw in their nature. A person who deceives once may have stumbled, but a person who deceives habitually has made a choice to prioritize personal gain over honesty, to manipulate rather than to stand firm in truth. Such a person is dangerous, not just because they lie, but because they erode the very fabric of human connection. Recognizing betrayal is not about bitterness, it is about wisdom. The Stoics did not teach blind forgiveness, nor did they advocate for vengeance. Instead, they urged clarity, to see things as they are, without illusion. If trust is repeatedly broken, we must ask ourselves, is this a relationship worth salvaging, or is it wiser to walk away? Can trust be rebuilt, or would restoring it be an invitation for further deception? Stoicism does not demand that we respond to betrayal with rage, but it does demand that we respond with reason. You do not have to hate someone to remove them from your life. You do not have to wish them harm to decide that their presence disrupts your peace. The wise response to betrayal is not revenge, but discernment, the ability to move forward with your dignity intact, your lessons learned, and your integrity unshaken. In the end, trust is a gift, not an entitlement. And those who prove unworthy of it have already made their choice. It is now up to you to make yours. Number 5, they avoid personal responsibility. There is no clearer sign of a weak character than someone who refuses to own their actions. The person who habitually shifts blame, evades consequences, and denies their mistakes is not just avoiding accountability, they are rejecting growth. To take responsibility is to face reality with courage, to acknowledge both our virtues and our failings. But those who fear this confrontation with themselves remain stagnant, caught in a cycle of deception, not only toward others, but toward their own soul. For the Stoics, self-reflection is not an option, it is a duty. True wisdom begins with the ability to examine one's own actions honestly, to learn from past errors, and to make necessary corrections. If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, wrote Marcus Aurelius. But what of those who refuse to change? Those who twist reality to absolve themselves of fault, who weave narratives where they are always the victim, never the cause. These individuals are not just deceiving others, they are actively corrupting their own moral compass. This avoidance of responsibility can take many forms. It may be the colleague who blames everyone else for a failed project, never admitting their own negligence. It may be the friend who refuses to acknowledge their mistakes, turning every confrontation into an attack on you instead. Or perhaps it is the partner who, no matter how clear their wrongdoing, shifts the burden onto others, ensuring they never have to look inward. Regardless of the scale, the pattern remains the same: an unwillingness to be accountable for one's own life. Such behavior does not merely affect the individual, it erodes trust, poisons relationships, and weakens the very foundation of any meaningful connection. When people refuse to take responsibility, they force others to carry burdens that are not theirs to bear. They disrupt harmony, creating an environment where honesty and integrity are replaced by defensiveness and manipulation. Recognizing this trait in someone is not about judgment, it is about wisdom. The Stoic does not waste time trying to change those who are unwilling to change themselves. We cannot force another person to see their own faults, but we can choose how we respond. If someone in your life consistently evades responsibility, making excuses instead of amends, the best course of action may not be to convince them, but to distance yourself from the weight of their consequences. In the end, personal responsibility is not just a virtue, it is the foundation of a meaningful life. Those who embrace it grow stronger, wiser, and more virtuous. Those who reject it remain prisoners of their own illusions. And as Stoics, we must always ask ourselves, are we choosing to walk alongside those who seek truth or those who run from it? Number 6. They isolate you from others. One of the most insidious tactics of a manipulative person is isolation. Not through force, but through subtle erosion, small remarks, quiet doubts, carefully planted seeds of mistrust. It never happens all at once. At first, it may sound like concern. Are you sure they really support you? Or, I just don't think they understand you the way I do. Slowly, these whispers turn into a wedge between you and those who care for you. And before you realize it, your world has shrunk to a single voice, theirs. This is not care, this is control, and it is profoundly dangerous. From a Stoic perspective, community is not a luxury, it is a necessity. We are social beings, meant to learn from and support one another. The great Stoic philosopher Seneca emphasized the importance of strong, virtuous relationships, reminding us that true friendship is built on mutual growth, shared wisdom, and unwavering respect. When someone seeks to cut you off from others, they are not protecting you, they are weakening you, stripping you of the ability to see the world through different perspectives, to challenge their influence, to think independently. A person who isolates you does not want you to be strong. They want you to be dependent. This is the opposite of Stoic virtue, which teaches self-sufficiency not as isolation, but as the ability to stand firm while remaining connected to others. No wise person lives in a vacuum. No strong person thrives alone. Recognizing isolation is difficult because it often disguises itself as love, devotion, or protection. I just want more time with you. I don't think they have your best interests at heart. You don't need them. You have me. These words may seem harmless at first, even comforting, but ask yourself, do I feel more free in this relationship or less? Do I still have my own voice, or do I only hear theirs? Stoicism does not teach passive endurance in the face of manipulation. It teaches discernment and action. If you notice someone in your life slowly cutting you off from your support system, it is time to reevaluate that relationship, to stand your ground, to reconnect with those who uplift rather than diminish you. True strength is not found in isolation. It is found in interdependence, in the ability to walk through life with wisdom while remaining connected to those who nurture your best self. A relationship that demands you cut ties with others is not a relationship. It is a cage, and the Stoic does not live in chains. Number 7. They use information against you. Few betrayals cut deeper than having your own words turned into weapons against you. There are those who listen not to understand, but to collect, to store away your vulnerabilities, your past mistakes, your private confessions, waiting for the moment they can use them to manipulate, humiliate, or control you. What was once shared in trust becomes a tool of coercion, a leash they tighten whenever they see fit. The Stoics, with their unwavering emphasis on wisdom and prudence, understood the power of discretion. Not everyone is worthy of knowing your struggles, your weaknesses, or your inner world. Be careful whom you trust, warned Seneca, for true friendship is rare, and the untrustworthy will reveal themselves not through words, but through actions. To live wisely is to share wisely, to open yourself only to those who have proven their honor, not those who merely appear kind in passing. Using personal information as a weapon is more than just a breach of trust. It is an act of manipulation, a calculated attempt to create fear, dependency, and self-doubt. It forces you into a position of constant caution, never knowing when your own past might be turned against you. This is not the nature of a healthy relationship. This is control masquerading as connection. A Stoic does not react with outrage, nor do they allow themselves to be ruled by resentment. Instead, they observe, understand, and act with measured wisdom. If someone has used your trust against you once, consider whether it was a mistake or a pattern. If it happens repeatedly, then the decision is clear. This is not a person worthy of access to your inner life. Distance is not an act of hostility. It is an act of self-respect. Protecting yourself does not mean shutting the world out, but rather choosing wisely who you let in. A life built on Stoic principles is a life where reason prevails over blind emotion, where relationships are cultivated with care, and where trust is given only to those who honor it. Recognizing this behavior for what it is and responding accordingly is not just an act of self-preservation. It is an affirmation of your own dignity, your own peace, and your own commitment to living a life of integrity. No one should hold your past over you. No one should use your truth against you. And no one who does deserves a place in your future. Number 8. They show no remorse for wrongdoing. Mistakes are inevitable. In every relationship, personal, professional, or otherwise, missteps will occur. But what truly defines a person's character is not the absence of failure, but their response to it. A virtuous individual acknowledges their wrongs, seeks to make amends, and strives to grow from their errors. The one who feels no remorse, however, reveals something far more troubling, a complete disregard for moral accountability. Stoicism places great emphasis on self-awareness, repentance, and correction. The path to wisdom is paved with introspection, the ability to recognize one's faults and commit to self-improvement. If someone is unable to correct his own faults, how can he be expected to correct those of others? Asked Seneca. A person who refuses to acknowledge their misdeeds is not just rejecting moral growth, they are rejecting the very essence of virtue itself. This absence of remorse manifests in many ways. Perhaps it's the friend who lies and dismisses it as harmless, the partner who betrays your trust yet acts as if nothing happened, the colleague who sabotages others but refuses to admit wrongdoing. Such individuals do not just damage relationships, they create an environment where trust is eroded, where accountability is absent, and where emotional manipulation replaces genuine connection. Recognizing this trait is crucial, not just for protecting your peace, but for preserving your principles. Stoicism does not teach us to seek revenge or dwell in resentment, but it does teach discernment. If someone repeatedly shows no remorse for their actions, we are left with two choices: to attempt to guide them toward accountability or to distance ourselves from their influence. Surrounding ourselves with those who aspire toward virtue strengthens our own character. Being in the presence of those who reject integrity, however, slowly corrupts our moral foundation. Stoicism reminds us that while we cannot control others, we can always control our response. Set boundaries. Offer forgiveness when it is deserved, but never at the cost of your own dignity. Live by example, but do not lower your standards for those who refuse to rise. Number 9, they consistently disrespect boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are the framework of self-respect. They define where you end and another begins, safeguarding your emotional, physical, and mental well-being. Yet, there are those who see boundaries not as lines to honor, but as obstacles to ignore, challenge, or break. When someone consistently disrespects your limits, they are not just being inconsiderate, they are revealing a fundamental disregard for your autonomy. In Stoicism, respecting boundaries is inseparable from respecting others' autonomy. To honor another's personal space, choices, and limits is not just a social courtesy, it is an ethical imperative. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that we're all part of a greater whole, but harmony is only possible when each person's dignity is upheld. To trample on another's boundaries is to act with arrogance, as if one's desires outweigh another's right to self-determination. This disrespect can take many forms. It might be the friend who constantly pressures you despite your refusals, the colleague who invades your personal space, or the partner who dismisses your discomfort as an overreaction. Over time, these transgressions erode trust, security, and peace of mind, turning relationships into battlegrounds rather than sanctuaries. Recognizing when your boundaries are being violated is not about selfishness, it's about wisdom. The Stoic does not respond with outrage or resentment, but with clear, reasoned action. When someone crosses a line, we can communicate firmly, reinforcing where we stand. If they persist, we must ask ourselves, is this a relationship that aligns with my values? Stoicism teaches that while we cannot control others, we can control who we allow into our lives. To stand firm in your boundaries is not an act of hostility, it is an act of self-respect. And in doing so, you do more than protect yourself. You set a standard for the kind of relationships and environments you wish to cultivate. A life guided by virtue cannot thrive among those who refuse to honor the dignity of others. The question is simple: will you uphold your peace, or will you allow it to be taken from you? Thank you for walking this path of wisdom with me today. Recognizing these signs is not about fear. It is about clarity. It is about protecting your peace, standing firm in your values, and surrounding yourself with those who uplift rather than diminish you. The journey to a virtuous life is not always easy, But every step you take toward awareness strengthens your resilience and deepens your understanding. If this discussion resonated with you, I invite you to explore more. Watch the next video on your screen, share your thoughts in the comments, and continue cultivating the mindset that empowers you to navigate life with wisdom and strength. Your engagement enriches this community, and together we sharpen our ability to face the world with reason and virtue. Until next time, stay strong, stay discerning, and never compromise your peace.